Life doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, turns, and surprises us along the way. On Better Things Ahead, we talk with people who have walked those winding paths. Each story reminds us of the lessons, hope, and promise of better things ahead.
This week, as we continue our Better Holidays series, we're going to look at kind of a heavy topic this week, and specifically grief through the holidays. Grief is something that we all experience in different ways, and so this week we wanted to kind of look at some journeys that some individuals have went on and how they walked through those holidays experiencing loss and experiencing grief. And so this week I'm happy to have a couple of friends here from Ridgecrest. We have Debbi, Logan, and Pat Childress, both heavily involved members at Ridgecrest and specifically involved in a grief ministry that we do here to help, again, walk through some of those journeys. Because as we kind of work through this podcast and we've talked about these different things and these different journeys that we go on, is a lot of these journeys are journeys that we don't necessarily think about or necessarily prepare for, or for lack of a better term, we just kind of avoid some of those conversations and things, but eventually we're all going to experience grief in some way or another. And so here we are, we're kind of talking through grief, specifically surrounding holidays. And here we are kind of coming into Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all those kinds of things. And so appreciate you guys taking time to be here and talk with us. And so to start, I just want you guys to have the opportunity to kind of introduce yourselves and kind of share a little bit about why you want to kind of help, and maybe share some of the grief that you went through and how it impacted holidays and things like that. And either one of you are welcome to start.
I'll start. Okay. So I just want to say that my husband and Debbie's husband both died in the same week, and it was very close to Thanksgiving. It was actually November 6th and November 8th, be 6 years ago. But it was very, very hard to be prepared for the holidays because it was so sudden. And even up to the Thanksgiving, we tried to figure out. My family actually talked about some things because we knew it was going to be hard. And that's what I encouraged, maybe to just talk to your family ahead of time and see how you're all feeling about what would be best for everyone. And we decided, I'm sorry, Ole Miss fans, but we decided because my husband loved Mississippi State, we all wore Mississippi State attire. And for our Thanksgiving. And that helped us to acknowledge that he had been a part of our family, but that he was not there. So that was helpful for us for that first Thanksgiving. We still grieved, we still were sad, and we still are. But that was something that we did. And I think Debbie, has a very similar circumstance because her husband died at about the same time.
Well, like Pat said, it was very close to the holidays. Ronnie died on November 8th, and within a few weeks you had Thanksgiving, and we actually had a lot of birthdays in November, so it was a difficult time because you miss them being there, but yet you don't want to miss those holidays. And one of the things that was very important to us is we're still going to celebrate that holiday. If he were here, he would want us to celebrate. We would be doing things that are traditional, but because it was so close to Thanksgiving, we decided, let's do something different. Now, when someone dies, you get lots and lots of casseroles. Everybody brings food to your house. And one of my son-in-laws said around the week of Thanksgiving, he said, "Are we out of casseroles yet?" And I said, "I think we are." So we made the decision. I made reservations at a very nice restaurant, and we dressed up, and we went out to eat on the night before Thanksgiving. Not a lot of people do that, so I had a little trouble finding a good restaurant, but we did. And we had that tradition, so we enjoyed it. We laughed because Ronnie loved to eat out, and he loved this restaurant that we ate in, and it was a way to do something different, but also still have those same memories.
Yeah. And so, talking, you guys kind of talked about it a little bit, but just out of curiosity, going into that first Thanksgiving, without your spouse, what did tradition kind of look like in the previous years, kind of leading up to that? And I know you kind of both did some things that helped honor that loved one for that first holiday, but it also, kind of changes, right? So what did tradition look like going into that? Was that something where you would have the family over, to your house? Was your kind of central meeting place? Did you go visit family, or what did that kind of look like for that tradition leading up to that?
So mine would be more for Christmas. Thanksgiving varied depending on who was going to be around. But Christmas, my husband and I had a very wonderful time having them all over on Christmas Eve. It became our day. When you have multiple families, you have to figure out how everybody can get their holidays in. And so we were allowed to have Christmas Eve. And we had it in the morning. We had a brunch. And so that was very important to us to get something for all of our family members and the grandkids, and everyone looked forward to that time. And my husband especially, he loved them all being around him. And so it was very hard. It's still hard, but that first one, we missed him terribly. And we knew, like Debbi said, we knew he would want us to go ahead and still get together. And so we did that. We went ahead and got together. And one thing I want to say is, like, the first few years, I was having a hard time having his picture out because it hurt so bad to look at it. Pictures with me, pictures with the grandkids. And it finally came to me that was not a good thing. I needed to share that he was a part of our family with the grandkids and the family, not to forget him. And so I would encourage y'all, even though it hurts, and it's okay to be hurting, that's what grief is, and even if it brings tears, that's still okay, because that is a good thing. Actually, emotional tears from grieving, God made them special. They have stress hormone relief in them and painkillers in them. It's not the same tears as when you hurt your finger. And so that is something God prepares for us. So it's okay to all of us to get together, all of us to be sad. But we also want to celebrate our time and that we are still here and we are still part of family. And we know that our loved one would want that. And so that is a way of honoring them by bearing through it.
We're really very family oriented at the holidays. Thanksgiving generally, my children and grandchildren would come to our house. And even though we did eat out the night before, we went out and did that on Thanksgiving Day. And depending on whether Ole Miss and State play at Oxford or played at Starkville, and I think we were still playing on Thanksgiving night 6 years ago, we would go to the game, depending on, and I'll say this very lovingly, we don't go to Starkville, we only go to Oxford to the games. And I think that year it was in Starkville, but we always watch the ball game. Now I have one son-in-law who is a Mississippi State fan, and he is sent home when it's time to start watching the ball game. He would not watch the State Ole Miss game with his father-in-law. He loved him, but he wouldn't watch the game with him. So we really did not change things a lot, but it was an obvious void, so to speak. And Christmas, we spend Christmas Day together all day. I have one brother, and he and his family and my family always get together at Christmas. One year we would come to mine and Ronnie's house, and the other year we would go to Mike and Elaine's house. So that first Christmas we went to my brother's house, and I remember my sister-in-law saying, I set a plate where Ronnie would always sit, and nobody sat there. And so we spent, after we ate and we sat around our circle, and we had not started doing gifts. We talked about him. We talked about things that we loved about him and how he was funny, and they told lots of funny stories, and we just had that. We cried, but we did not. I think what Pat said is true. You don't want to stop remembering that person just because they're not there. You want to remember those things, and it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
And I think we all said that.
Yeah. So, kind of building off of that, what are some ways that, how do you, because a lot of times we get caught up with the holidays, right? It's supposed to be this happy, joyous time. We're celebrating, we're getting together with family, we're doing all of these things, but for any individual who's walked through grief, and specifically grief in the holidays, there's times where that almost feels like a front, right? It almost feels like I'm trying to pretend, I'm trying to just go through, the motions and things like that. So if someone was kind of working through this process, and maybe this is, right now we've kind of been talking about that first holiday, but I don't know that holidays, they may get easier, but it's never easy, right? And so how would you talk to someone who's maybe kind of wrestling with that and thinking, well, like, I know I'm supposed to have a good time, but I just feel this emptiness or this void. How do you find that balance of remembrance versus the celebration that you guys kind of talk through?
So I'll share with you, I think the greatest way to do that, because there are people that aren't comfortable with you sharing it, the greatest way to do that is find someone who is in a similar situation. No one's grief is the same, but I had a cousin who lost her husband 6 months before me. We hadn't gotten together. She lived in New York, and I hadn't seen her in years, but we connected. And so we would talk periodically, and she shared with me to find that special time or place to be able to grieve and talk to someone that understands. And she encouraged me to be in a grief group. And I encourage anyone to get in. It can be very informal like our one is here. It's just us getting together and having a safe place and set a time aside to grieve, where you're not keeping it in and not doing it, and you're not just spending all your time in depression and alone. So she encouraged me that, and I encourage that anyone to do that as well. And she encouraged me to remember that person, have those sad tears, and that, like we talked about, that's healing and it's good, and don't let anyone tell you shouldn't cry, because you should. And there are people that are uncomfortable with you crying, so they may say that, but find the comfortable person. And then just talk about it, but don't stay there. She always encouraged me to talk about, okay, what are you planning to do next week? What are your plans for this? Basically, I don't want to say your new normal. It's not really normal, but your different life. We do both things. We talk about that person, but we move on to our new life too. That keeps us from staying in a place. It doesn't mean we're forgetting the person. It doesn't mean we're not still grieving. It just means we're moving forward with what God has given us now.
That's good.
Yeah, I think what Pat said is absolutely true. You do need to grieve, and I will say this, this will be 6 years. It gets easier, and it's a different side of the grief, but I don't think it ever goes away. And every holiday, every birthday, you're going to remember that person, especially if you had a great relationship with them, whether it be a spouse or your parents or whoever you've lost, you're going to remember them. And I think what Pat said is right. It's good to be with other people and spend time. Now, I needed time by myself, and I don't think you need to be so by yourself that you let yourself get deep into depression. But I say this all the time. Sometimes I just wanted to pull the sidewalks in, close the doors, and be in my house with my memories by myself. And I might cry.
Sure.
And that, to me, that was one of the ways that I could manage the grief. But if you become so isolated, then that's where you need to raise up and say, okay, I got to get some help. I can't keep doing this. But sometimes you just need a little time for yourself, to be by yourself and think about it. And I do believe God gives you an ability and the strength to see it through that. And I can remember sitting on my couch and talking to God and talking about the things that we did. And I think that's okay too. But I do stress, holidays are hard under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And they become doubly hard when you add grief. So don't let yourself get too deep into that.
Yeah, and I think, anytime I'm walked with, someone through grief, that's kind of my message, is that process is great. That's healthy. Mm-hmm. The only time it becomes an issue is when we get stagnant or we get stuck in that process, and we pull ourselves inward and we stay there.
Right.
Or we get so caught up with the anger that we just stay there and let that bitterness grow. And so, that's probably on my side of things is just as you're walking through that grief process, knowing that it is a process, and it may be a process that goes on for years, but if you're walking through it and you're continuing to kind of press forward in that, that's where it's healthy compared to allowing yourself to, get there and just be alone forever. Because you're right, there's tremendous health. But we've already talked about the tremendous opportunity for finding others to come alongside with, and the benefit and the health and the support that provides. But there's also time where we need to be alone, and that gives us the opportunity to process those things on our own, relive those memories, and absorb, and again kind of walk through that. And so I think all of that is really good. You mentioned something that I think is an interesting thing, and I'll let you guys speak to it if you have something to kind of share to that. You mentioned grief is different based on the relationship you had with that individual, and so is there anything that you would maybe say to someone, maybe that someone's listening who maybe they lost a loved one or a family member that they did not have a great relationship with, and how would you talk to someone who's kind of walking through that aspect of grief of because what I've seen is there's a little bit more anger there, a little bit more frustration or regret that you had this not great relationship or things like that. And so how would you maybe talk to someone who is on that side of grief kind of through the holidays?
Yeah, I can share about that because I think all of us have regrets when someone dies, even whether it was a good relationship or not. I have regrets of the different things that the way my husband and I did. We were together for 40 plus years, but as in any marriage, there are times when you didn't quite do what you maybe would have liked to do later. And then actually when he died, I was in the other room, and I beat myself up about why wasn't I in the room, why was I sitting over here. And so I was going through all those feelings and asked God to forgive me about it. But then God did forgive me, of course. I wasn't forgiving myself. So I want to encourage anyone who is stuck in that place. God has forgiven you. Why do you think that you shouldn't forgive yourself? We are not greater than God. If God can forgive us, we should surely forgive ourselves. And I even heard it on radio. It was a man that was not a believer, and he was talking to someone who was a believer that was very upset with himself and not forgiven. He said, well, I think that's a slap in the face to Jesus. Jesus died for that. Why are you not forgiving yourself when Jesus forgave you? And so I'm just saying it's hard to do that, but we all have those feelings, and I just think that you can give those to God and know that God has forgiven you, so forgive yourself.
That's good.
Well, I think in the holidays, holidays are generally a happy time, so we try to remember all the good things, but we're foolish if we think that we didn't have some terrible moments. And so I think if you have that person that you didn't have that just perfect relationship with, and you remember some of those things, it's okay to say, I'm sorry that this was like this, but try to focus more on the positive. I'll say something about Christmas, and one of my girls will go, now, Mama, Daddy just got so tired of all these. He would say we have all these presents and really we need to be focusing on what's important. And I said, yeah, but I'm going to forget about those things at Christmas. I'm not going to remember those things that your daddy might would have said. So I think sometimes we push those down, and maybe that's good, maybe that's not. But for every difficult thing you remember about someone in your relationship, remember something good. And it sort of will offset it and help you get through it.
Yeah.
That reminds me, talking about remembering the good, that I am not a person that journals normally, but I found to get a little journal book after he died, because I wanted to remember things, and I thought, I'm going to forget some things, and I wanted to remember what other people said about him. And so I still have that, and every once in a while I will write something down that comes to my mind, and it can be for future, but it's also healing for me to write it down so I don't forget it. And I would encourage anybody to do that, even if you're not a journal type person, because I'm not. But it's been helpful to me to do that.
That's a great idea. And and I think that's something I wish I was a journaler. I've tried multiple times, and I cannot build the discipline to do it because I don't have a great memory on some of those things, and so it's like I would, anyone listening, I would encourage them to be better than me and write those things down now, because to your point, as we kind of talk through this, grief is something that happens, right? Kind of usually, more times than not, unexpectedly. And if we have some of those things and then post that, I think that's a great idea. As you're talking to people and you're hearing the other people's experiences, I think that's a great idea. And so, with that being said, is there anything else specific, maybe that I haven't asked or I haven't touched on that you think would be important for someone walking through grief through the holidays? That kind of your passing knowledge. Our podcast is called Better Things Ahead, and so what we want to do is give you guys the platform to share from your experiences as you have, and that next individual, allow them to have a better experience walking through that grief than even you did. And so, anything else that you would kind of add to the conversation?
Well, one thing I was just thinking as you were saying that, if you don't feel like doing something, it is okay. And I think that's one of the things that we think, oh, I have to be at everything, I have to be seen at everything. But do what you can do, but don't feel you have to overdo it. And it's been 6 years, so my memory is probably not great. But I know that I probably decorated less that first year, and that's okay. Or if you don't want to go to a bunch of Christmas parties, one of the things that is hard is to go to a Christmas party where maybe you've gone to with other people for years and everybody's got their spouse there, if you happen to have lost your spouse and you go to that party by yourself. So find a way to either do something different or not to don't put yourself in a position that you think you cannot manage yet. And Pat's got a word, it's ambush. Because you will get ambushed if you, sometimes you can be somewhere and it will flood over you like, it's just like the grief just comes falling all over you. It can be in the grocery store, it can be at church. And so I think know what you are capable of doing and don't feel you have to do more than that.
Yeah, and I want to say about the word ambush, my cousin actually taught me that, because it's really helpful to have a name for what everyone that grieves goes through, because you can be going on with your normal day, like she said, and it would happen to me. I would walk in a store that was playing the oldies but goodies, and that song would just bring back those saddest memories of my husband and I at this time. So, and then with my mom, she loved Christmas, and she had these certain Christmas songs that she loved. She's been gone 20-something years, and I still cannot play certain Christmas songs, and that's okay. I don't not celebrate Christmas. There's just certain songs that hurt because they remind me of my mom. And I think my mom would be okay with that. She would understand. But to that, I wanted to say the first Christmas, silly us, we always had stockings even for the grown-ups. We just love stockings. And I couldn't put mine and my husband's up that first year. And I think it took a few years before I finally just put mine up by myself. And that's okay, too. It's just things that you're not quite ready for. That's part of it, and it's all normal. And just wait till God gives you the feeling that it's okay.
Yeah, that's great. I've got one more question that I just thought of is, we spend a lot of time talking about the individual who may be going through the grief process. I want to spend just a moment talking about the person who knows someone walking through that grief process and give them some advice and help to how to approach that person carefully and all those kinds of things. Because to your point, whenever someone experiences loss, especially I think if they're connected to a local church, they're going to be surrounded. People are going to pour in the casseroles, pour in the greeting cards, reaching out and all those things. But to your point, eventually, a lot of that, too much of that, can become overwhelming. And I think we, as those individuals who are trying to care for, we have to be aware of some of that too, and know that if they say, "No, I don't want to come to your, Christmas party, I need to be alone, that's okay, just as you said, but someone, like, how would you kind of coach someone who they know that, they have a friend who lost a loved one and these holidays are going to be tough? How would you encourage or help support them and coach them to lead and speak into that person's life?
I think one thing is, as you said, if it's a group that you normally do things with. Ronnie and I were in a supper club, and I can't remember if we were still having supper club during the holidays, but that would be something that would be really, really hard to do, because usually a supper club is husbands and wives. So if that person says, I really don't think I want to do that, say, that's great, I'm going to bring you a plate over, or maybe you and I can go out to eat, or I'm just going to come have a cup of coffee with you. Find something else that you can do with that person that will give them a different experience. But don't make them feel guilty. And sometimes people make you feel guilty. Oh, Ronnie would have wanted you to come. Come on, you'll be fine. No, I don't want to do this. And it is, as a friend, you need to be sensitive to what that person is going through, and maybe find something unique or different to do with them.
That's good.
That's true. And also make sure that after all the casseroles and all the calls and all the cards are gone, your grief is not gone. So maybe try to encourage that person a little bit longer. Not every day or anything, but just send them a card thinking of you, or just call them and ask them how things are going. And like Debbi said, just invite them to do something or ask them to come over. Because everyone that's been to our grief class, they have acknowledged that it's very hard after all that's done. And then there you are. You're not the same life you had. Everybody else has gone back to their life, but you're not able to go back to that. So just be mindful that that person is still grieving, even though the funeral's over, and they're not going to get over it, and they shouldn't be told to get over it. And so just be there for them, and don't be afraid to talk about the loved one with them. They may cry, and they probably will, and have tears, but as we said, tears are good. So it's okay for them to cry and have those memories. And we always try to end our classes with Brian always likes us to end with something good and funny. So, don't make it all gloom and doom with them, but have some fun things to share with them too.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And as you go through Thanksgiving, Christmas, you're going into January, and those are cold, dreary months.
Yeah.
And it gets dark early, and so I think what you said, Pat, about just because Christmas is over and all the fun and all the wrapping and all those things are over, don't forget that person. Continue to minister to them, or continue to call them and say, what else can I do? Because winter is hard.
Yeah.
It's a very gloomy time, and so I would encourage you to, what Pat said, continue to call on that person even though Santa's gone and it's time to move on to the next holiday.
Yeah, that's great. And so to kind of end on, kind of a positive note, as you mentioned, our holidays are just around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Do either of you have big holiday plans this year for Thanksgiving or Christmas that you know of at this point?
Go ahead, Pat. What are your plans?
I don't know anything about Thanksgiving yet. Someone will invite me, I'm sure, eventually. But for Christmas, we will still have our brunch on Christmas Eve, and we'll all get together and celebrate. And I do have the pictures of my husband and I out, and I do have the pictures of him and the grandchildren out. So it's all good.
Yeah, that's great.
We will we'll go out to dinner the night before Thanksgiving, like we always do, and we haven't had this conversation yet, but we'll go to my brother's house most likely on Christmas, and we will have the best time, and we'll laugh, and somebody will tell a story about their Uncle Ronnie or their granddaddy or whatever, because it's just how we are, and we will